It's Golden Week in Japan, the biggest national holiday stretch of the year. Millions of people are traveling, the highways are full, and on a Nishitetsu express bus rolling out of Saga at lunchtime on May the 3rd, 2000, there are 21 passengers who have no reason to think this will be anything other than a routine 40-minute ride to Fukuoka. They would not arrive in Fukuoka for 15.5 hours. And here is the thing that set this case apart from every Japanese hijacking that came before it. 1 hour before a 17-year-old boy pulled out a kitchen knife and seized control of that bus, he told the internet exactly what he was about to do. He posted it on a public message board under the alias Neomugicha, Neo-Barley Tea. The people who read it laughed at him. They told him he was lying. He wasn't. This is the Neomugicha bus hijacking. May 3rd, 2000, the Nishitetsu Wakakusu Go Highway Express bus departs Saga Station at 12:56 in the afternoon, heading for Fukuoka's Tenjin district. Routine route, ordinary day. At roughly 1:35 p.m., near the Dazaifu interchange on the Kyushu Expressway, a teenager in one of the rear seats stands up. He is 17 years old, from Saga Prefecture, and he has a chef's knife in his hand. He walks to the front of the bus and presses the blade against the driver. The driver has no choice. The bus does not turn toward Fukuoka. What follows is one of the strangest and most harrowing ordeals in modern Japanese criminal history. For the next 15+ hours, the bus rolls through northern Kyushu and then across the Kanmon Strait into Honshu, moving through Yamaguchi and into Hiroshima Prefecture, covering roughly 320 kilometers with a teenager and a knife and 21 passengers trapped inside. During the early part of the hijacking, the boy attacks passengers with the knife. He stabs 3 women. One of them, a passenger who cannot be moved to safety, later dies in hospital from her wounds. 2 more passengers are so desperate to escape that they jump from the moving vehicle. They survive but are injured in the fall. A 40-year-old woman manages to escape the bus around 2:47 in the afternoon. She is the first to alert police, and from that moment, law enforcement is tracking the bus across 2 prefectures. By nightfall, Japan is watching. News cameras follow the bus. Negotiators make contact by phone. The driver keeps driving because he is told to. The remaining hostages sit and wait. It is not until the early morning hours of May 4th, close to 5 a.m., that the bus finally stops. It pulls into the Koya service area on the Sanyo Expressway in Higashi, Hiroshima. There, members of Japan's Special Assault Team, the SAT, drawn from both the Osaka and Fukuoka prefectural police, storm the bus. The teenager is overpowered and arrested. The hostage-taking is over. It has lasted 15 hours and 30 minutes. 1 woman is dead. Several others have been harmed, and Japan wakes up to a case unlike anything it had seen before. The boy, whose alias became the name of the whole case, had been planning this for days, and the weeks and months before the hijacking tell a story of someone who had been quietly unraveling for a long time. His real name, later widely reported in Japanese media, is Taniguchi Seiichi. He was born in March 1983 in Saga Prefecture. His father worked as a salaryman for a construction machinery company. His mother was a public health nurse for the local government. He had a younger sister. By early accounts, he was a bright and energetic child, academically strong through elementary and junior high school, known for being active and in those early years good-natured. But something changed during his junior high school years. He was bullied. Not a minor episode, persistent enough that by the time he was a teenager, he had essentially stopped going out. He became housebound, and the pressure that had nowhere to go began to surface inside the family home, where it said he started showing violence toward family members. His parents tried to get help. They brought him to a psychiatrist, and in the months before the hijacking, he had been briefly admitted to a psychiatric facility. He was on temporary release, what in Japan is called jia tui yuan, a conditional discharge, when May 3rd arrived. That morning, he told his parents he was going cycling in the forest. Instead, he went to Saga Station. He got on the Wakakusu Go express bus as an ordinary passenger. An hour before he pulled out the knife, he posted on the internet forum 2channel, already in 2000 one of the most visited sites in Japan. His handle was Neomugicha. Neomugicha. He had been active on the forum, and he had already posted hints about what he intended. But the tone of those posts was sardonic enough, cryptic enough, that 2Channel's regular users saw them and reacted with derision. Some responded that he was a liar, some mocked him. The idea that someone would actually do what he was describing, that was real and happening right now, didn't register. He had also reportedly posted on the eve of the incident, May 2nd, one line that has been widely quoted in Japanese coverage: "Mother, they told me I have no presence." A comment about feeling invisible, about mattering to no one. Then he boarded the bus, took his seat, and waited. The question of motive is complicated because Taniguchi himself gave different accounts over time, and because Japanese courts handled the case primarily through the lens of mental health rather than criminal responsibility. But the shape of what drove him is legible. He had initially planned, it is said, to return to his middle school, the school where the bullying had happened, and attack people there. A revenge fantasy that had been building for months or years. According to what was later reported, he changed the plan because Golden Week meant the school would be empty. The bus was, in some sense, a substitute, a target of opportunity, a crowd of strangers who became stand-ins for a world that had ignored and diminished him. His mother had told professionals she was frightened of him at home. His parents had tried to intervene through mental health channels. It's alleged that the family knew something was wrong, that this was not ordinary adolescent difficult behavior, but something more serious, and that the system they turned to did not prevent what was coming. The post about having no presence is telling. Bullying in Japan is not always physical. Often its cruelest form is social erasure, being treated as if you do not exist, being excluded from conversations, from groups, from basic acknowledgement. For a child who had once been academically strong and socially visible, the experience of being rendered invisible by peers may have created a wound that festered without treatment. Taniguchi had been diagnosed, informally at the time, with what was described as a mild mental disorder. After the hijacking, the court-ordered psychiatric evaluation found symptoms consistent with dissociative disorder and conduct disorder. These are not small things. They suggest a person whose grip on his own identity and on external reality was already fragile before May 3rd ever arrived. And then there is the 2Channel element. He posted publicly. He wanted to be seen. He wanted someone to know what was happening, either to stop him or to witness him. Like other perpetrators in this era of Japanese crime, there was an audience dimension to what he did. The act itself was not enough. It had to be announced, broadcast, acknowledged. The internet gave him that capacity for the first time, and he used it. This is interpretive territory, not a clinical assessment, but an attempt to understand the human being behind the act. What strikes many people who have studied this case is the combination of visibility and invisibility that defined Taniguchi's adolescence. He had been a child who succeeded, who was seen, and then bullying stripped that away. What replaced it was not simply sadness or social withdrawal, it was rage, directed initially inward, the isolation, the refusal to leave the house, and then outward, the family violence, and ultimately the hijacking. The online element matters here beyond just the 2Channel posts. Anonymous internet forums offered something that his offline life had closed off to him, a space where he could exist, where his words could be read, where he could be somebody. He wasn't alone in that experience. In 2000, Japan's internet was still relatively new as a mass phenomenon, and for young people who felt marginal in real social life, these anonymous spaces were sometimes the only place where a sense of self could be maintained. When he told the forum what he was going to do and was laughed at, it is possible that the mockery hardened something, that being disbelieved in that space, too, was a final indignity. The psychiatric findings of dissociative disorder and conduct disorder point to a fragmented relationship with self and with others. Dissociation, in particular, can blur the boundary between fantasy and action, between imagined scenarios and real ones. It may help explain how someone who seems, by his early biography, to have been a normal, bright child could reach a point where stabbing strangers on a bus felt like a coherent response to his pain. Survivor Yamaguchi Yumiko, one of the passengers injured during the hijacking, later became a human rights advocate for youth struggling with adjustment. According to what has been reported, she visited Taniguchi while he was still in the reform facility around 2005. He knelt before her and apologized in tears. Whatever that encounter meant to each of them, it doesn't undo what happened. But it does suggest that the teenager who boarded the Wakakusu Go bus was not someone who felt nothing. That somewhere under the violence, there was a person who knew at some level the weight of what he had done. That doesn't make what happened forgivable. It doesn't make the woman who died any less dead. But it does complicate the clean narrative of the monster, and that complication, sitting uncomfortably alongside the grief of the victims, is closer to the truth. Taniguchi Seiichi was not criminally prosecuted. He was 17, and Japanese juvenile law at the time treated underage offenders differently from adults. In September 2000, the Saga family court decided against criminal punishment, citing the psychiatric findings and recommending medical intervention. He was sent to the Kyoto Medical Juvenile Detention Center, a medical reform facility, and underwent a structured rehabilitation program there for just over 5 years. He was conditionally released in January 2006. The case had consequences far beyond one teenager. It landed in the middle of a wave of high-profile juvenile crimes in Japan. The Kobe child murders of 1997, the Ikebukuro and Shimonoseki rampages of 1999, and it accelerated a conversation the country had been avoiding. Were the laws written in 1948 still adequate? The answer, in November 2000, was no. Japan revised the Juvenile Act that same year, effective April 2001, lowering the minimum age for criminal punishment from 16 to 14. It was a significant shift, and the Neomugicha case was explicitly part of the political pressure behind it. And the internet dimension reverberated too. Japanese police began monitoring 2channel for credible threats after the hijacking. The forum's own culture changed. Users who had mocked Neomugicha as a liar were shaken when they understood the posts had been real. Over the following years, copycat plotters who announced intentions online were identified and arrested before they could act. This case, in a real sense, wrote the first rough draft of how Japan would handle online threats going forward. But maybe the most unusual piece of the aftermath is also the most human. A survivor's decision to go and meet the person who had hurt her, and a young man's tears of apology. That encounter doesn't balance any ledger, but it signals that something that looked at first like pure senseless violence had, underneath it, the wreckage of a human being who had been failed at multiple points along the way. By peers, by systems, and perhaps by an internet that amplified his despair while mocking it. If there's a lesson here that travels, it isn't that all troubled teenagers are dangerous or that anonymous forums are inherently evil. It's that the warning signs were there and legible. He posted them. He said in plain sight, "I have no presence, no one sees me. I'm going to make them see me now." Thanks for watching. If this story stayed with you, subscribe, because these cases are about more than what went wrong. They're about all the moments before where something could have gone right.